Welcome back to another Q&A. We got some pretty awesome questions this time around. Starting off with, when it comes to Combat Pack 1, or any upcoming NetherRealm game, should they show the silhouettes of the remaining DLC characters? I think it's a good idea because it creates a lot of discussion between the fans trying to predict what the characters are. In this case, it worked out quite well, but in general, I don't like showing the true silhouettes. It seems that this time around, we did get 100% the true silhouettes for every character. And that's pretty sad to me that back then we would have been able to predict all of the characters besides a couple. There were people literally back when, for the first fighter pack drop that said Raiden, Black Manta, Adam, Enchantress, and I even saw a couple people say Hellboy. That's pretty embarrassing, and I don't think that that puts us in a good position. So what I would like them to do moving forward is to show some silhouettes, but have most of them be a misdirection, and have a couple of them be real, and then the guessing game, the discussion in the community becomes picking which ones are truly the real silhouettes. Do you think in the upcoming multiverse with the Justice League movie, we will be able to unlock Wonder Woman gear yet again, despite her multiverse already happening? That's how I'm going to choose to read that comment, just because the wording is a bit strange, but that's roughly how I perceive that Q&A question. I don't think we'll be able to unlock her gear in this upcoming Justice League multiverse, but as far as I'm aware, you can actually get that gear in mother boxes, because I have most of the Wonder Woman gear on Xbox, and I've never done any of the Wonder Woman movie gear multiverse event stuff. I've just got it, so I'm assuming you can just get it out of mother boxes, or you can get it as you play the character. Is Injustice 2 the first game you really got into? No, not at all. I have very, very many hours played in Counter-Strike. My highest rank in Counter-Strike is LEM, and for anybody who knows anything about Counter-Strike, I mean, that's a pretty high rank, but I kind of stopped playing Counter-Strike for a significant period of time. After that, I played Hearthstone. Hearthstone was a big passion of my life for a very long time, and now it's going to be again now that I've started up my second channel. I think I've got like 18,000 games won. So that means I have like 30,000 plus games played on Hearthstone. So yeah, I like that game a lot. Smoky Bones gets a 2-for-1 with how long did it take you to learn the combos? Combos are fairly simple to learn. I mean, every single combo is all about, well, not every single combo, but most combos, especially ones that involve using meter, is about getting your opponent in a position where you can land a back three, the universal back three mechanic that launches the opponent. With most characters, this is fairly simple. Batman's down forward 1 meter burn puts the opponent in a stunned position where you're able to use the back three. Sub-Zero's got his clone, Sub-Zero's got his meter burn freezing bowl thing. Lots of different characters have this really easy setup to land a back three. Now, there are some characters like Bane and I can't think of any others on the top of my head, but there's plenty of characters who don't have a way of doing this or launching the opponent in a position to land a back three. I think Bane actually does have one of those. I could be wrong. I'm not familiar with Bane. And those combos are a little bit more tricky, but in general, it's fairly simple to come up with a combo. And even something as simple as, back three, jump in three, and then like a string is enough to get a decent amount of damage in. So when you're trying to learn combos, don't try to go for the most optimal thing straight away. That's actually just not very valuable. In fact, I only really know the most optimal combos for one character, and that's Batman. Every other character, I do very simple, basic combos that I came up with myself, and I just adapt them to different situations. Even though I know there's much more optimal combos out there, I just do whatever comes to me naturally, or I, practice a little more with the character and try to optimize the combo a little better. Could the mystery character be Harry Potter? It would be a surprise, and he's owned by Warner Brothers. It's actually funny, I had Harry Potter in a video of mine before the game was released. We were talking about potential DLC characters, and one of the crazy DLC characters I threw out, it was actually in a video titled, I think it was like 5 crazy guest characters that could show up in Injustice 2. And one of the characters on that list was Harry Potter. Because again, he is owned by Warner Brothers, it's possible. But no, I don't think this will happen. Do you think NetherRealm will release a whole wave of DLC characters in 2018? This is actually way more possible, in my opinion, than just an extra fighter pack. If fighter pack 4 happens, I think fighter pack 5 will happen, and I think fighter pack 6 will happen. I don't think we're just going to get 1 extra fighter pack. That being said, I don't think we're also going to get 3. I don't think we'll get any more fighter packs after fighter pack 3, but if we do, I think we're going to get significantly more than just 1. Do you think John Constantine could work as a Hellboy premiere skin? No, I don't think so. I understand what you thought there, like, oh, he's a demon, Constantine uses demons, there's some demon stuff going on with Hellboy's kit, Constantine could do stuff like that, but the brutality that comes across in Hellboy's kit when it comes to things like, well, first of all, his gun, his big gauntlet, slamming the opponent's head into the ground multiple times, this is just something that John Constantine doesn't and should not do. Do you think NetherRealm could pull off an Etrigan premiere skin for Hellboy Maybe he could throw fireballs instead of the gun. Somebody in response to what T-Bus said, what about the gauntlet? And then T-Bus responded by saying, I suppose he would just have a normal fist. And I completely agree with that. I think an Etrigan Premier skin is actually possible for Hellboy, but I don't think it will happen just because the characters are so different. But that's actually something that could work. I know it doesn't sound like it could work because of the big massive fist, but honestly, that's not really that big of a deal. It's not like the fist is like the body. We're not asking like Gorilla Grodd to become, you know, the Atom. We're just asking to get rid of the fat gauntlet. I'm not even sure if that thing will have a hitbox. And if it does have a hitbox, then you could just leave the hitbox the same size, but then just replace it with Etrigan's model? I'm not sure. But regardless, I really want Etrigan in the game, and if this is how he has to show up in the game, I'm more than happy with that, but again, I don't think it will happen. If their respective characters make it into Injustice 3, do you think premier skins like Power Girl and Jay Garrick, for example, will make it into the game? This is actually a really interesting question. Jon Stewart made it into the game from Injustice 1, and in Injustice 1, he was practically a premier skin. They didn't call it a premier skin, but that's what he was. He changed into Jon Stewart. He had Jon Stewart voice lines, and his outro was Jon Stewart specific, if I remember correctly. The reason why he had such a dramatic change from Injustice 1 and Injustice 2 is because they went on an entirely different generation of consoles. There's such a big gap in between each NetherRealm game. It's 2 years for each NetherRealm game, so it's 4 games for each either Mortal Kombat or Injustice game. There's such a massive improvement in graphical fidelity by the time you get around to the sequel. That gap is so significant that they can't just port and upgrade a model. We see this with sports games all the time. The new models aren't actually new, they're just slightly upgraded from the previous year. But because there's a 4-year gap in between Injustice 1 and Injustice 2, and in between that gap there was a new console release, they weren't just able to port over models like Jon Stewart. So it's going to be interesting to see Injustice 3, which won't have a new console. Are they just going to be able to port models like Power Girl, like Jay Garrick? I certainly hope so, because that means it almost confirms that Jay Garrick will be in Injustice 3. Not so much Power Girl, because we don't know if Supergirl will show up in Injustice 3, but it's probably a fair prediction. Do you think there's a chance of NetherRealm adding more loadout slots or new level capacity? So he's talking about increasing the level capacity and adding new slots for loadouts. This is something I don't think will happen. Most people don't have enough gear to facilitate that many loadouts, and the level capacity seems fairly irrelevant. This is probably something we're going to get in Mortal Kombat or Injustice 3, assuming that either of them have gear. An increase in level capacity will almost definitely happen, or if it doesn't, I'm happy as well. It doesn't really matter because that raw number is fairly irrelevant because they're going to make it roughly as long to get to that level anyway, right? It doesn't matter if it says 20 or if it says 30, the amount of time it takes to get to that level is what's important. But regardless, I don't think we'll see an increase in level capacity or more loadout slots. Have you ever decided to play Tekken? There are no zoners. I don't find zoners to be a difficult matchup, so I like zoners being in my game, so I enjoy playing Injustice 2 for that reason. Zoners in general I think are really easy to beat. Most zoners have no idea what they're doing, it's quite easy to beat them, or at least most people that spam zoning effects. But as far as Tekken goes, in general, no, the game doesn't really appeal to me in a big way. Tekken just seems to encompass everything that I hate about the fighting game genre, so I think I'm just going to stick to my NetherRealm games, but I'm glad it's something you're able to enjoy. I'm assuming you enjoy it, because that's the question you're asking me. Would you ever get the legendary gear for every single character in Injustice 2? I would imagine at some point, but I currently play on 3 different platforms now that the PC version of Injustice 2 exists. Granted, it's only in beta, but it exists. It's really hard for me to do that on all 3 platforms. I would imagine eventually I'll get it done on PC, but probably not the other platforms, no. Do you think we're going to get the skin system from Injustice 1 or the gear system in Injustice 3? Probably the gear system. The gear system was very well executed. All of the complaints about the gear system are more or less, hey, we want more of it. Some people say it's not complicated enough. Some people say there's not enough, references to classic comic book stuff. Some people say there's not enough, CW stuff. All of this stuff is upgrades to the gear system, which can happen as we progress into future games. I really do hope they continue to improve the gear system with both MK11 and Injustice 3, and if they choose not to, honestly, that will probably get me to end up quitting, because I think the fighting game genre without that type of gear system gets stale very, very quickly. Outside of competitive environments, I think it's very hard to make competitive, esport level fighting games boring. I think that's always really, really fun to watch, and I will always watch competitive, specifically NetherRealm games. Do you think Zoom or Savitar will ever get Premier skins or gear for the Flash? Savitar probably won't, at least not the CW version of Savitar, just because of how big he was. As far as Zoom goes though, they could totally add some like Black Flash or Blackest Night style Flash gear that would be very similar to what you're looking for. Who knows when that's actually going to happen though, and I'm not holding my breath, but here's hoping. Do you think NetherRealm will add a tag combat system from MK9 for Injustice 3 or MK11? Probably not. This is one of those problems we find with fighting games in general, and that is the queue times are already pretty long, and Injustice already has so many different queues. You've got Versus competitive, you've got King of the Hill competitive, ranked, and now on top of that you have to add a tag playlist, and then on top of that, do you need a tag competitive playlist? Do you need a tagged ranked playlist? Do you need a tagged King of the Hill playlist? Do you need a tagged King of the Hill competitive playlist? How deep do you go? The system I would prefer is that we get rid of the competitive queue, replace it with regular player match, and keep ranked mode, and also add a tag combat mode on top of that, and just keep it with 3 simple playlists that are very easy to access. That should be enough to keep queue times down while simultaneously adding in a tag mode. Well, that's about it for me. Thank you guys for watching this video. My name has been Bilbzy, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.